Welcome to the Irish in Arizona. My name is Valerie McGrew. I'm a local San Francisco historian and a volunteer at the Patrick J. Dowling Library located at the United Irish Cultural Center of San Francisco. This is a recording of a presentation made at the October 2020 Zoom meeting of the Irish Marvels, past and present, who normally meet at the United Irish Cultural Center. Over the past few years, I have had an opportunity to make several extended stays in the beautiful state of Arizona. Today I will be sharing with you what I've learned about the story of the Irish in Arizona. When the first Europeans arrived in what would eventually become Arizona, they would have been impressed by the solitude, by the brilliance of the sun, and by the incredible beauty of the Grand Canyon and the Sonoran Desert. At the same time, they encountered the unrelenting heat of the summer sun, the prickly cactus, and unfamiliar animals like scorpions and coyotes. The Native Americans, most notably the Navajo and Apaches, were equally unwelcoming. They fiercely resisted the encroachment of the Europeans. Well into the late 1800s, Apaches like Cochise were raiding into Mexico and making life extremely difficult for the residents there. Like most of the early settlers in Arizona, the Irish were rugged individualists, or soon became so after their arrival. This probably explains why the early settlers of the late 1800s and early 1900s differed from members of the Irish communities of Boston, New York, and San Francisco, in that they did not join associations or societies with the same frequency. Arizona also attracted a larger number of Irishmen who were Scotch-Irish Protestants. The communities in other parts of the United States were predominantly Irish Catholics. Today, 10% of the population of the state identifies as Irish. They have kept alive their heritage notwithstanding their unique characteristics. The first Irishman to make a key impact on the story of Arizona was Hugo O'Connor, or El Capitan Colorado, as he was called by the local Native Americans. He was named for his fiery red hair and equally fiery military tactics. At the head of a Spanish army in August of 1775, he founded the Presidio San Agustin del Tucson. The Presidio, along with a neighboring mission and a civilian town, grew into the city of Tucson. Over 500,000 in population, it is Arizona's oldest city, becoming part of the United States with the Gadsden Purchase. Dublin-born O'Connor was the descendant of Turlough More O'Connor, King of Connaught and High King of Ireland. Like many other wild geese, he moved to Spain in order to achieve fame and fortune in the Spanish Royal Army. He ultimately became a military official in northern Mexico. For a brief time, he even served as governor of the territory of Texas. With the end of the Mexican-American War in 1848 and the subsequent Gadsden Purchase, Arizona came under the sway of the United States. During this period, a group of Irish mountain men, like Daniel O'Leary and John Ward, arrived on the scene in Arizona, acting as guides for the U.S. military. For every one of the larger-than-life characters who followed these mountain men, there were dozens of average citizens who, through their hard work and perseverance, helped build modern-day Arizona. They were cowhands, farmers, miners, builders of the railroads, and business owners. Many became involved in the civic life of the community. For instance, John McCormick from Ulster was the governor of the territory of Arizona. Boomtowns like Globe and Tucson attracted a large number of Irishmen with the discovery of gold, silver, and copper in them thar hills. Globe was built on an Apache reservation in present-day Gila County. With a higher elevation, the weather was slightly better than the Tucson area, but life was still hazardous due to the number of murders, stagecoach robberies, outlaws, and Apache raids. Globe was a silver mining town populated with miners and the people who mined the miners. William Ryan, whose family hailed from Tipperary, built a drug and stationery store, which grew to 35 stores in the mid-1960s. Dennis Murphy from Limerick, an entrepreneur, opened butcher shops and eventually a hotel. The Brophy family, also from Tipperary, went into the ranching business. Henry Armour, who helped build the Erie Canal, was a farmer. Now I will share with you the stories of some of the amazing people who arrived in Arizona during this period. William Bucky O'Neill. Bucky earned his nickname from playing contrary to the odds, or bucking the tiger at Faro. He spent his short but adventuresome life living up to the name. Born in St. Louis in 1860 of Irish descent, he arrived in Tombstone and worked on the Tombstone epitaph in either 1880 or 1881. He would have written about events like the shootout at the OK Corral and people like Nellie Cashman. By the time he was 30, he had settled in Prescott, Arizona, where he pursued multiple careers in journalism, law enforcement, politics, and finance. In 1886, Bucky became captain of the Prescott Grays, the local unit of the Arizona militia. The Prescott Grays stood guard on February 5, 1886, when Dennis Dill, a convicted murderer, was hanged. When the trap dropped, Bucky fainted. He used this embarrassing experience later on when he wrote a story called The Horse of the Hash Knife Brand. In it, a member of a posse admits to nearly fainting at the hanging of a horse thief. In 1888, he was elected county sheriff, running on the Republican ticket. During his tenure, masked men robbed the Atlantic and Pacific Railroad passenger train in Diablo County. A four-man posse, led by Bucky, pursued the robbers through the countryside. The posse caught up with the robbers the next day. After exchanging rifle shots, the posse took the robbers into custody. The only fatality was Bucky's horse. Bucky also helped introduce a bill allowing women to vote in municipal elections in 1897. Although he convinced his populist friends to sign the bill into law, the High Court dismissed the bill in 1899. Things were getting too tame for Bucky in Arizona. When the war broke out in 1898 between the United States and Spain, Bucky immediately enlisted in Teddy Roosevelt's Rough Riders. He would have been a man after Teddy's own heart. Sadly, he was killed while walking through the front lines trying to encourage his men to charge a hill. Intrepid women from various religious orders of nuns soon arrived in Arizona to build schools and hospitals. One especially adventuresome group of women belonging to the Sisters of St. Joseph Academy of Carondelet departed from St. Louis in 1870. Monica Corrigan, a Canadian of Irish descent, kept a diary of the journey, which was published with the title Trek of the Seven Sisters. They traveled by train from St. Louis to San Francisco, where they boarded a steamer for San Diego. Leaving beautiful temperate San Diego behind, they set out for Tucson. The almost 400-mile trek took them through hot, dry, desolate desert occupied by hostile Native Americans. On the first leg of the trip across the desert, the sisters bounced along on a buckboard from San Diego to the Colorado River at Fort Yuma. While traversing the desert, Sister Monica recorded that they heard wolves howling in the distance. If it is anything like today, she most likely heard coyotes catching their prey, but still alarming to a group of city slickers. Arriving at the river crossing, they navigated the perilous river on a raft to Yuma, which was a natural crossing for the unpredictable Colorado River. At the time of the sisters' crossing, Apache warriors had been particularly active in the area around this part of the Gila Trail, which stretched from El Paso to California. To ensure their safety, soldiers from Fort Lowell in Tucson met the sisters at Picacho, some 40 miles north of town, and escorted them on the final 2 days of their journey. We had scarcely time to brush the dust off our habits before opening the school, wrote Sister Monica. In 1890, Mother Mary Paul of the Irish Order Sisters of Mercy dispatched a group of Irish-born nuns to set up a school in Arizona. Soon they found their true calling, however, which was establishing hospitals. Their hospitals spread throughout Arizona. Apparently they were well supported by the Irish lads who had made it good in Arizona. In 1895, they opened St. Joseph's Sanitarium in Phoenix to nurse people who were suffering from TB. Their most well-known patient in this era was Father Eugene O'Growney of County Meath, one of the 3 founders of the Gaelic League. He resided at 3 of their sanitariums in Arizona and California. Eventually, he moved to the sisters' home in Los Angeles, where he died in 1899. In 1903, Gaelic Leaguers raised money to have his body exhumed. Irish Arizonans like Tim and Michael O'Riordan of Flagstaff contributed to the effort. His body traveled in state by train to San Francisco, then to Chicago, and on to New York, where memorials were held along the way. Finally, his body was laid to rest at St. Patrick's Academy in his home county. Nellie Cashman. Nellie Cashman, who hailed from Middleton County, Cork, Ireland, was a true Cork lady, gutsy, compassionate, hard-working. Leaving Ireland during the devastation of the Great Hunger, she would achieve fame and fortune in the boom towns of the Wild West. Her adventures took her to the mining fields of Nevada, California, British Columbia, Arizona, and finally Alaska. In British Columbia, she led a search team through harsh weather for 77 days to rescue trapped miners who were suffering from scurvy. In 1880, 35-year-old Nellie was living in Tombstone. She would have met Bucky O'Neill, of course. While in Tombstone, she opened and ran a restaurant and hotel called the Rush House. According to legend, a customer was complaining about her food when Doc Holly drew his gun and asked him to repeat it. Seeing the error of his ways, the customer quickly changed his tune and said, "Best I ever ate." Nellie went on to build restaurants and boarding houses in boom towns throughout Arizona, including one in Globe. Nellie vehemently opposed public executions, which were especially common in the boom towns of the Wild West. On March 24, 1884, the 5 perpetrators of the Bisbee Massacre were to be publicly hung in the town square. On the eve of the execution, Nellie, leading a group of miners, tore down the public gallows in the dead of night. The execution proceeded, but was carried out away from the public eye. The bodies were quickly buried in the nearby Boot Hill. Fearing their bodies were going to be exhumed for medical research, Nellie had 2 miners stand guard over the cemetery for 10 days. She was known for her generosity to needy prospectors, frontier hospitals, and church missions. Her altruism included supporting the local church and the Sisters of St. Joseph. She did all this while raising her sister's children after her sister died in 1884. Although she left Ireland as a 6-year-old, and her life epitomized the rugged individualism of a typical American settler in Arizona, she never forgot her homeland. She continued to financially support the cause of equal rights for Irishmen. For instance, on St. Patrick's Day in 1881, Nellie and her fellow Irishmen in Tombstone held a ball which raised $200 for the Land League. In 1898, she left Arizona for the goldfields of Alaska. It is said that in her 60s, she ran a dog sled 750 miles across the frozen Arctic, a truly remarkable Cork lady. The orphan train arrives in Arizona. Between the mid-1800s and 1929, over 200,000 orphans were relocated via the railroads from the east to foster homes in the Midwest and the West, with some happy outcomes and some not so favorable ones. In 1904, the Sisters of Charity sent 40 Irish Catholic orphans from New York to Arizona by train, with great hope for a better future than they would have had in the East. In New York, the children were hard to place due to anti-Irish Catholic sentiment. The train delivered the children to Clifton, an Arizona mining town where they had been offered a place in the homes of Mexican Catholics. The Mexican residents of Clifton had agreed to adopt the children as family members, rather than treating them as servants or laborers, like the fate of many other orphan-trained children. A band of white vigilantes, urged on by concerned Anglo mothers in the community, objected to the children being adopted by Mexicans. They snatched the children by force from the Mexican homes and placed them in Anglo homes. The armed vigilantes were so hostile that the parish priests and other participants actually feared for their lives during the abduction. The Sisters of Charity sued for their return. In fact, the sisters took the case to the U.S. Supreme Court, but lost, and the children remained with the Anglo families. Although it was a shocking example of bigotry and ignorance, especially by the court system, the children were apparently treated decently by the Anglos who took them into their homes. Their existing pictures show the girls in frilly dresses and the boys in suits typical of the era, all well groomed. For additional information, check out author Linda Gordon's The Great Arizona Orphan Abduction, published in 1999. As I mentioned at the beginning of this presentation, 10 to 15% of the present-day population of Arizona identifies as Irish. Whether they are the descendants of the pioneers or just off the plane from Ireland, they continue to celebrate their heritage with bagpipers, dance, and festivals. The focus is, of course, the little gem in the desert, the Irish Cultural Center and Mcclellan Library, located in the heart of Phoenix. The center is comprised of a monument designed to honor the Great Hunger, a reconstruction of a famine-era thatched house, a hall, and an amazing library called the Castle. On their website, the center bills itself as a comprehensive and interactive cultural and learning experience, linking the people of and to Arizona with the people of Ireland and other Celtic cultures. They offer programs, classes, festivals, and special events, including history, music, art, dance, literature, drama, crafts, language, travel, sports, and traditional activities. One of the best St. Patrick's Days I ever spent in Arizona was a visit to the center. Afterwards, my brother and I, who were visiting our sister in Surprise for spring training, went to the Irish Wolfhound, the only Irish pub in Surprise. A large throng gathered under a tent to shelter from the hot sun. We were entertained by dancing and pipers and consumed barbecued Irish sausages and pints of Guinness. Great fun and camaraderie.